So today, we were talking about presenting our passions in life, and this is my passion and something that I've been involved with since 2006. So just kind of show you my journey and how it intertwines with UCSD and what I do day to day with training grants. Very different dichotomy here. A lot of people, I like to give people a little bit of a geography lesson. I'm talking about East Africa, which is the highlighted red there. Africa is just an enormous continent. You can fit the whole United States in there 3 times over. It's just an amazingly huge place. And I live right above the equator in the northern hemisphere, and the children's home is in the southern hemisphere. It's on the south of the equator. So I cross the equator actually twice a day, every time I'm going to the children's home. So you can see we have like kind of crazy neighbors. Somalia, never been there. Ethiopia, Sudan, we get a lot of refugees in northern Kenya from different wars and things that break out. And then Uganda, and then to the south we have probably our most calmest neighbor, which is Tanzania. And what you see right there is Masai Mara Reserve. That's when you see like people going to the Serengeti. That's the same thing. And when I fly into Kenya, I fly into Nairobi, which is the largest, it's the capital of Kenya, and then the largest city in East Africa. And then I drive to Nakuru, which is the 4th largest city in Kenya. And this is just a typical, street in Nakuru. This is where I do like a majority of my shopping. A lot of people have heard of Lake Nakuru. It's famous for the 1,000,000 flamingos. So that is just this is about an hour south of where I live. So if I want to take a day off and go look at animals, it's also a rhino conservancy. So it's kind of cool to go visit, go and take a little safari. The children's home is just 25 miles north of Nakuru, and then I live another 25 miles north of that in a place called Eldama Ravine, which is here, just to kind of give you some context. So my timeline, my story. So I've been working at UCSD since 1998, and then I was working in chemistry, and then I moved over to health sciences in 2005. And I went on a mission trip with my church. I just felt like I'm gonna, go serve the poor in Africa. Didn't know really why I was going. So I went on my first trip in November 2006, and I visited this place called Elma Children's Home. And I felt like God was calling me to give up everything I owned and move there. And I came back home from that trip, and I told my dad, I go, Dad, I really feel like I'm being called to Kenya. I'm gonna sell my car, get rid of my apartment, get rid of everything, and I'm gonna move to Africa. And when you tell people that, people are like, you're crazy, you're nuts. And so my dad said to me, he gave me some great advice. He says, go on a second trip and make sure that the call is still there. Make sure it's not like you got the wrong message. And I did. I went back in June 2007. I felt 100% commitment. I didn't know what I was going to do when I moved there. And anyway, I made that decision to move there. And then October 2007 here, the San Diego fires hit, which if you're not from this area, this highly impacted North County, where I grew up in Poway, Rancho Bernardo. And from my church alone, we lost 67 homes. And so, and I was moving to Africa just a couple months later in April 2008. So I just basically gave away everything I owned. I had a house full, apartment, condo full of stuff, and I just gave away all my dishes, silverware, because I figured I'm moving to Africa for the rest of my life. I'm not going to need it. So I quit UCSD. My boss at the time in pharmacy would not give me a leave of absence. So I just took off. I quit. I was a little nervous, no health insurance, nothing, but I decided to do it. And I moved to Africa. I moved to Kenya for a year. And I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to be volunteering at this children's home. And you can see the poor conditions of the children's home. It was horrendous. And this was the primary school. And I thought, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? People are asking me, well, you're moving to Africa. What are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm going to teach kids how to type because that's what I know how to do. I can't teach them grants, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach them how to type because that's a skill they could use, right? So I was living, like I said, I moved there in April 2008. In June, July 2008, and I was working with this reverend at this children's home. And one of the boys came to me one day and said, do you really want to know what's going on here? And I go, well, yeah, I gave up my job. I moved halfway around the world. Please tell me, like, what am I really doing here? And he proceeds to tell me that this pastor, and I really had reservations putting his picture in here, but again, to give you context, I was told that this pastor was sexually abusing the boys in the children's home. And over many, many years of a long period of time, he had abused about 40 boys. And so I was like just in shock and disbelief. I remember driving back to my house that day and I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do? And so I went to the missionaries that lived out there and I said, this is what one of the boys told me. And I called home, told my parents. My brother was like, you should move back home. Don't be in that situation. But I stayed. And so basically we had to move all of our children out of the home while there were these allegations. And we lived in temporary housing for about 9 months. The girls lived in a little small clinic in the village. And then the boys lived in some of these classrooms. And we had more boys than girls at the time because he only sexually abused boys. He didn't sexually abuse girls. So we had more boys in the home. So it was a trying time. I mean, I'm a single, American white woman, and you're coming into a very culturally sensitive, that's a very sensitive thing to accuse someone of sexual abuse in that particular environment. And so I had some death threats against me. People were not happy with me, especially in that community. They thought I was like the enemy. So we lived in this temporary housing for about 9 months, and it was kind of a chaotic year. I was just, running around doing what I could to feed all the kids and, make sure we were safe and whatnot. So we wind up raising some money. A lot of the donors back home felt very deceived by William. And so they didn't, it was hard for us to raise money just to buy land and to start building again. But we were able to. And we bought this piece of property. And so my year expired. I had to go home. I actually, this was in April 2009, I got very sick. And I think it was my immune system was just worn down. And I was actually in Nairobi hospital for about a week. And I had a plane ticket home. And the doctor said, okay, you can go home, but you have to rest for like 6 weeks. And I'm like, how am I supposed to rest? Like, I'm trying to make arrangements for, kids to move in to, their new home. And, anyway, so I did go back home to the States. I went back and stayed with my mom because since I had no place to live and gave away everything I owned. And I returned in June, just a couple months later, and we did move the kids in. And I should prefix that there were some other missionaries on the ground that helped out with everything that you'll see in this project. And then there were some other short-term missionaries that came in right after me to kind of pick up where I left off. So this was obviously very emotional. We didn't have a whole lot of stuff. So it's kind of an easy move, but kids being kids. So we built our first structure on our new property. We built this boys' dorm. This was a concrete structure, which we realized does not stand up very well in that particular environment. So anyway, that was our first structure. And then there's just some, random pictures of the kids. This is Simon and his bunk. The boys' dorm, I find it a little bit messier than the girls' dorm, but the boys try to do their best in keeping it clean. The girls, unfortunately, when we moved over, they had to live in a mud hut because we didn't have any other housing for them. And so we had about 2 or 3 girls to a bed. We didn't have a whole lot of room. And then we built this temporary mud kitchen, to feed all the kids. So these are the missionaries that came in after me, Megan and Ryan, great people. And so Ryan came up with this idea that you could make these bricks out of mud, hydrofoam bricks. And so this is a machine we rented for like $70 or something. And so we made all these bricks. I should say I didn't make them. They made them. I was back in the US by this time. And so this is how we started building all of our buildings subsequently from here. And so this is the girls' dorm, the first building we built with the hydrofoam bricks. Girls are a little bit neater. I don't know why I like to point that out, but they are. Anyway, and all these wardrobes you see, those were just handmade by one of the missionaries there. And we try to give the kids as much space as possible, what little they have. And then things kind of started snowballing, and we found donors, and we built a kitchen, we built a dining room. Our dining room office, works as a multi-purpose room. This is just one of the kids, Samuel, getting his lunch. And one of the normal dish, I guess, you eat for kids, grade school kids eat is githeri, which is maize and beans, which is like, I'm not a big fan, but maize is basically just a harder corn, and it just gets stuck in your teeth. And anyway, I don't need to digress on that. But anyway, here's our kitchen, very nice and bright. We did have to refurbish it at one time. We did start a biogas project, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but basically you take cow dung and it creates methane, and then you can generate it into a gas for burning and for cooking. And it's totally, I always thought it was like, is it going to smell? And it doesn't smell. And so basically we were able to start cooking with this biogas, which was kind of cool. It was an experiment. Not all of our projects have gone super smoothly. This was one where we go out and do research on the internet and find other places in Kenya or Africa that are doing biogas, and then kind of copied what they did. But one of the things we didn't take into account is that we were cooking for more than the average size family. So we ran into a problem that we didn't have enough cows. We didn't have enough methane. So we weren't creating enough biogas. So we had to buy more cows. So I just decided to put this in there. So back in the US, I was kind of reluctant. I didn't really want to go back to work. I really wanted to go back to Kenya. And I realized when I moved in with my mom, and I get kind of personal here. Sorry if I get emotional, but I realized my mom was starting to get Alzheimer's. And so when I moved in with her, I knew, when I moved back, I had to take care of my mom. So I was unable to stay in Kenya for, full time. So I kind of reluctantly went back to work at UCSD. And but I just decided, okay, well, I'll still volunteer. I'll still travel to, Kenya 3 times a year. I'll still keep up on projects. I'll do fundraising. And that's where we created Walindwa, which is the U.S. nonprofit, the umbrella that we raise money under here to benefit the children's home there. So I put a board together and did presentations and whatnot to donors and stuff like that, fundraising. So meanwhile, things keep going. In Africa, we kind of got all of our ducks in a row, and there was a lot of issues with the former pastor because we were on his property, And so when we had to move, it was very difficult. And you know, to tell you also that he was never put in prison, he was never arrested. Unfortunately, with the corruption, he was able to pay people off. And so I actually worked with a human rights organization in Nairobi. They tried to investigate him, and they basically said they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute him. So he's still out there. And he actually tried to start another children's home, which was really hard to see that happen. And doesn't matter who you yelled at, or I would go to the police station like on every trip, and I'd be like, why aren't you guys investigating this guy? And they chose not to believe me. They chose not to believe the boys over, you know, cultural things. So it took us a while to get all of our ducks in a row, as far as we became an NGO, became a CBO, and we were registered with the government. We were completely legit. So we continued building and building for a long time. We built a primary school. We have a drone that we brought out there one time, and so that's kind of this cool picture here. It was basically like a one-room schoolhouse, primary school, and just some pictures of the kids walking from, you know, the primary school to lunch. And then in 2011, we actually started writing the application to become a 501c3. And I don't know if anyone has ever done this, but it's an extremely long process. And so we did not get our incorporation for a year. And so it took us a while. We couldn't raise money basically and send it because, you know, it's just how it is. But so we came up with the name Walindwa, which in Swahili means those that are guarded or protected, which means the kids. So I became very passionate, obviously, about the kids' welfare, and I wanted to make sure they were protected and guarded from, you know, bad people in this world. And so that's kind of, I mean, that's the name behind. A lot of people don't understand the name, so it's a Swahili, obviously. So in 2012, we started our child sponsorship program, which has kind of been our flagship program, where we take, you know, someone from the US, we match them with a child there, and they sponsor them. And I've had sponsors go with me because I make so many trips over the years. And this is my friend Dominique and her husband Christian, and they sponsored Mercy. And Dominique is a scientist. She used to work for Pfizer. I don't know who she works for now, somebody. But her husband used to work at Salk, actually. So because I work at UCSD, I've gotten to know a lot of scientists somehow. So they came over and they taught chemistry and biology, I believe. Just some other kids. We have two sets of twins. This is Dennis and Alan, and then Melvin and Paul. They're not twins, but they're just some of my boys. Paul is actually deaf, and so we had to send him to a special deaf school, but he's just a really, really neat kid. So in 2012, a big year for us because we had the original property down here, and then we raised money and we bought this new property up here, and we decided, actually I should not say we, it was the Elma Barnett board in Kenya. They decided they wanted to build a high school for the local community and for our kids. And so we embarked on this new journey of not just having the children's home, but to build a high school, which is it's been a crazy ride. But now we had all this room to plant our own food. So we were able to grow a lot of our own food, at least for the children's home, not necessarily 100% for the high school, because that's a lot of food for a lot of mouths to feed. But we were able to get more cows. Obviously, we are able to milk the cows for tea, which is taken twice a day. So we started this the high school, Elma Kamonong High School. In 2013, we started building, and then we started adding on, you know, every year we'd add on a classroom kind of thing. Just some pictures here. In 2014, my parents had, even though my mom was getting Alzheimer's, my dad had come over many times to me to Kenya, over to Kenya with me, and he really adored the people there. And so in 2014, my oldest brother came over, and he decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and raise money for the children's home. So my brother had never been to Africa. So this is him. They did the whole football pitch, and yeah, you have to understand, and it's a soccer pitch, whatever. Kenyans are really into their soccer, so this was like a big deal for them. And I was like, okay, it's a soccer pitch, whatever. But that was a big deal for them. And so here's Scott. He climbed Kilimanjaro, and you can't see what he's holding in his hand, but it was like a picture of the Walindwa logo. But anyway, that's on the top of Kilimanjaro. So later in 2014, just a couple months later, I went back with Dominique, who I talked about earlier, and then some other friends from UCSD, some scientists, and we brought 25 computers from that were donated from Pfizer. So I was like super excited, because I'm like, finally, I get to teach the kids computers. Like, this is what I've been wanting to do all my time there. And so that was a really fun summer, and we had there was probably like 8 of us that were there. We continued to build. This was a day high school, and that was the original intent, to have day students come from the community. And then that we decided that to build boarding facilities, so we could host kids that went home during the day, or if they wanted to stay, if they were from another part of Kenya. So we built boarding facilities at the high school. This is just some pictures of what it looks like inside. I like to bring us back. We're going from one continent to the next. So in 2015, this was now 2015, and I started working in the RSC as a training grant analyst. And but our old director, Maureen, I told her, I said, well, I'll only come to work for you if I can go to Kenya 3 times a year. And she said, sure. And so it's coincidental that training grants have 3 major deadlines per year, which is September 25th, January 25th, and May 25th. So usually right after the deadline, I will go to Kenya and spend time there, because that's my slowest time. So you'll notice I'll just disappear for a couple of weeks, and this is usually where I'm gone, and the times of the year that I'm gone. So actually headed to Kenya next week, a little delayed this year. I would have been there by now, but we'll be going, me and my husband will be going next week. Again, we continued to fundraise, and we've been blessed by many great donors over the years. We built this huge dining hall for all the high schoolers. I would call this the Poultry Palace. I don't know why we came up with this name, but we started a chicken project. And so now the kids can, we'll slaughter chickens every once in a while, and they have fresh eggs to eat. One thing I did with them, to digress a little bit, we did Easter eggs one year. I happened to be there over Easter, and so they had never dyed Easter eggs. So we had, eggs from the chickens, and we dyed Easter eggs. That was kind of fun. The kids were actually really excited to eat the eggs. I was like, you guys are going to go out and make a hunt for them? And they're like, no, we just want to eat them. 2017, we continued to progress, and we knew we had to have the science lab if we wanted to graduate our first class. These were Kenyan government laws that to be a certified school, we had to have a lab. So we built this science lab. You see, I don't know how many science labs you see, like cows out sitting walking outside the window. But so that's we created the science lab. Another one of my friends came over, Betty. She taught science there. She was a middle school science teacher, 7th grade, back in the US. We also went green. Well, actually, I shouldn't say we started going green. We didn't have electricity all this time. So we went solar in 2017. We created a solar system big enough to cover all the buildings on the campus, it's 23 acres. So it's a pretty big campus. And these are just some of the solar panels. We are able, solar batteries I have learned a lot about a lot of different things. Being involved with this project, but solar batteries are much cheaper there. And so you can buy solar batteries and store power. As for here, people don't do it so much, but because they're so expensive here. 2018, we graduated our first class of high schoolers. Unfortunately, I wasn't there at the time, but this was some of the pictures that were sent to me. We had one donor that was very interested in online learning, and so he donated these e-readers by World Reader, and so we were able to put a lot of books. They didn't connect to the internet yet, but put books and stuff on for the kids. So that was kind of a neat thing to see the kids kind of starting to get into the digital age as far as technology. We built teacher housing. In Kenya, normally you live where you work. That commuting isn't really a big thing unless you live in the big city. But generally speaking, if you are employed, somewhere, you live there. Like a policeman, they have headquarters, at the police station where the policemen live. And same thing with teachers. And so our principal and all of our teachers live on, and our staff live on the compound. So in 2018, we finally put in electricity just to be on the grid and have a backup, which is always kind of nice, right? And just in case we don't have enough solar power. So we have a hybrid solar system. We started a teacher enhancement program in 2018. This is Madam Mary helping with computers. And so it's basically like an incentive program. We found there was a lot of teachers that, because we're a private school, we couldn't pay as much as like the national schools. So we were losing a lot of great teachers to, more different teaching positions. So we try to enhance the budget and boost the salaries for the teachers. Then we also started a Bright and Needy program. So you have to remember, this high school that we built wasn't just for our students, it was for community students. And we were finding there was a lot of community students that were very bright, but they couldn't afford to go to school. And so to go to high school there, it costs you about $500 a year. That pays for all your tuition and your boarding. And so we started like a scholarship program for what we call Bright and Needy students, kids that are out in the community that are in need. Of course, who could forget 2020? The pandemic hit, and there were some positives that came out of that. One of the things was, we have a compound, and we had all these teachers, the staff, and the kids. Everybody was isolated, and everybody quarantined on the campus. So all the kids in Kenya had to go home, but we were able to keep our kids there and they weren't actually able to teach like in the classroom, but they were able to do tutoring one-on-one. And so all of our kids continued in school, which was pretty amazing. And we were able to continue to pay our staff. So that was a huge accomplishment for us, and just a really difficult time. The interesting thing, and I could go off on a whole different diatribe about the pandemic and being in a third world country. I actually wasn't able to travel for about 18 months because of the pandemic. And it's just was so different there, because someone would get a cough here, right? And I would be like, okay, I gotta go get tested, and there, like, people had it and they didn't even know it. And so it was very interesting. And you only went to go get tested if you were extremely sick and were hospitalized. So, all around the world, I think it gave me a different perspective on, testing, and especially being from UCSD, where we were doing wastewater testing. I remember I told the kids about that, and they couldn't believe we were doing wastewater testing. So, it's a different world for sure, and how they dealt with it. We continued building, and we built a digital library, and this was finished, I think, in early 2020. And we didn't really get to outfit it with the computers that we brought over from Pfizer were antiquated by this time, because that was 2014. And this was kind of my dream come true, was to create this digital library. I wanted to teach kids computers. So this was named my dad, and named after my dad, who passed away in 2018. And so this was named in memoriam of him. And this is, we've had, I think we have about 25 or 30 computers now. And then I think it was my first trip back was 2021, or 2022. I can't, no, maybe it was 2022. Anyway, we have internet now. We're in a very rural area, so internet is very hard to get. And so that was kind of cool. Naomi is here. I turned on a TED Talk, so I'm like, okay, you guys are gonna watch something educational. You guys are gonna be tainted by the internet. And so we really would like to do more, you know, online based classes. You know, it's slow internet, but if you have 25 computers on at one time, but you could do, you know, you could stream things. But so anyway, that's been kind of we also do Mavis Beacon, which is a typing program. In 2021, I guess it was, somebody donated money and for a bus, and we weren't expecting that. I thought this was like the last thing that we were ever going to get, but now we had a bus to bus kids, you know, either to the primary. We have another primary school that our kids go to now, and so it's good if they have events or whatever, that we have a bus for transportation. Kid gets sick, you need to bring him to the hospital in the middle of the night. We're getting almost up to date now. So last year we had a huge drought in East Africa, and it was really hard. When I was there last February 2023, I mean, we saw, you know, dying cows. It was really hard. People were like cutting down trees just to, you know, be able to feed leaves to their cows. And so it was a really difficult time, especially with the global economy taking a downturn. Ukraine, which produces a lot of maize for the world, you know, the price of maize had skyrocketed. So it's been the last year because of the drought, but now it's starting to rain, so we're really thankful for that. And we had donations for water. We were able to drill for water again. We had the first well we built, borehole, dried up. They call it the water table, dried up. So we had to drill again. So we were able to drill just, I guess it was 2022. I thought it was, no, we drilled for water in 2023, excuse me. And then we have these collection tanks all over the campus, and they're on the eaves of all of our buildings. And so you basically have gutters, and then when it rains, the water just pours in there. So we have, you know, pretty clean water for drinking, washing clothes. Of course, we don't have, you know, washing machines. Kids have to wash their clothes by hand. You know, food, everything. So this is, and I noticed this has become like a big thing in the US. People are starting to do like these water collection tanks, which I just always find it amusing, because I'm like, oh, we've been doing that forever. So I just wanted to go through some, you know, alumni and our graduates. This is Josephine. She graduated from a university with her bachelor's degree, and she's now a high school teacher. She actually came to our high school and did her internship. This is Henry. He graduated from Nairobi University, and he went out and worked as a teacher for a while, and then he is now our principal at our high school. And I should note, like, for Henry, he really overcame adversity, because he was really one of William's victims. And so he was able to, you know, complete college and really make something of himself. So a lot of the boys that were abused, you know, some of them have not gone down the best path. They've resorted to alcohol for, you know, for coping mechanisms and whatnot, going to get, you know, Therapy is just not common in that culture. So a lot of them do not get the therapy that maybe they should have to deal with the sexual abuse. So anyway, it's a pretty big accomplishment for Henry. It's a great kid. Just some other college students, Tyson, who's currently in college, and Julius and Winnie and Hillary are actually brother and sisters. We actually have quite a few siblings in our home. This is Naomi. I'm very, very, very proud of her. She is now in nursing school at Capswire Medical Training College, and she's just a really great kid. Just some other people. So I do have a board here, a Walindwa board, as I refer to them as the white board over here in the US. And then we have the Elma Barnett board. And so over the years, I have had board members go over there, and I have to kind of be that liaison between two cultures. It's very hard to understand, how they think, or they have a hard time understanding how we think. Then you have money involved and fundraising, and so it's a different dynamic. It's definitely been challenging. Occasionally I'll bring board members over there because we have to have meetings or talks or whatever. Here's another two of my board members, Lori and Keith Edwards, and this was Paul Latuya, the deaf boy that they had sponsored. So took a picture of that. Here's some of our other board members. And a lot of them are from the community, the local community, because we are a community-based organization. So a lot of these people all live in the direct community. And that's one thing to be said, is now this area, and you can see how rural it is in the background. And then we come in and we start building all these buildings. I mean, we are definitely, our direct neighbors may live in a mud hut, and yet we have all these buildings. We do have we do community outreach. We are very friendly with the community now. It wasn't like that when, during the years of William and all that. People really took his side. They thought, well, he's a pastor. You can't, make these allegations against pastor. And so I got a lot of flack for that. But anyway, those are some of our board members. Here's some of the teachers and staff. We had a little conference, and I think this was, I don't know, last year when we did that. These are the missionaries that have lived in Kenya. Helen was actually born and raised, she's an American. They're American missionaries, but she was born and raised in Kenya with her sister. And so her maiden name is Barnett. And so her grandmother came to Kenya in 1905. And started a children's home in this area, the Kiplumbe area, for girls that were fleeing female circumcision. And so that's why we named the children's home Elma Barnett Children's Center, because after her grandmother. The Kenyans were insistent that we named it after her. So that's how we got our new name from. We were Chapema before, and now we're Elma Barnett Children's Center. So, but they're starting to age out. They're 80 years old now. When I go over there next week, I'll have meetings with them. I'll have meetings with the board members. We're always constantly looking at sustainability, not just for food and, solar, stuff like that, but also for the long run, making this whole project sustainable. And not be dependent on overseas donors. So, we're working towards that. Just a couple of our staff members, Madam Mary, I actually call her Motorcycle Mary, because she was on a motorcycle a couple of years ago and she got in a car accident and had a big gash on her head. So I teased her and called her Motorcycle Mary. Anyway, great people. Eric lives right in the area. We try to employ people, whether it's construction or teachers, anybody that lives in the local area. And so it really helps out the local community. Eric is so interesting, because just to sit down and talk with him, he's never been in Nairobi. He's never been in a big city. When you tell him, like, you flew over here, you flew to Kenya and it took you 24 hours, he's like, he's never seen a plane. I mean, so it's very interesting. I asked him, I like, well, do you ever go to Nakuru, to go shopping? He's like, yeah, but I hate it. There's so many, like motorcycles and there's so many people. So it's just really, he's a great guy and he loves to milk the cows. I know it's a funny thing. Tried to teach me to milk the cows one time. It didn't work out very well. So besides the children's home, Walindwa has been involved with a couple of other projects. We did a solar lantern project in the kamonong community back in 2011. And that was kind of just to thank the community for supporting us. And, the interesting thing about the Kenyan culture is with the pastor there, they really took his side because and once they found out even still what he was doing, they still took his side over a foreigner. And so it was interesting. And we had to really rebuild those relationships. And that's one thing that you'll hear me always talk about is relationships. And it happens at UCSD. It's always about relationships with other departments, other people, central offices, with each other, with our PIs. And the same thing here. I mean, that's one thing that crosses no boundaries is we are, it's all about relationships. And so we really wanted to, we raised money for these little solar lanterns. They were about $10 each. And so we gave one out. I think we gave a couple hundred of them out to the local community. We also did it in the Masai Mara, which is in the southern part of Kenya. And you see the women wearing their traditional Masai clothing. That's my dad. And with the Chicago Bears shirt. And he did that project with me in 2012, a couple of my board members. To bring you up to date, so this is my wedding day. I just threw this picture in here. October 1st, 2022. So I've been married just for a year. Judy is there and she's one of my best friends and she's on the board in Kenya. And so she gave me this Maasai wedding necklace. And then my husband got like this Maasai club. And so we were really thankful she was able to come out for the wedding. And now that I'm married, my husband, I've suckered him into the project. And he's actually in heating and air conditioning. We don't need a lot of heating and air conditioning work out in Kenya, but he's also a general contractor. So he's installed all of our solar in our house. And so he was able to work on the solar when he was there and do maintenance and stuff. So he'll be going back with me next week.
That's a gorgeous dress, Jill.
I'm sorry.
Gorgeous dress.
Thank you. So I don't know. I just had to throw that picture in because it's my wedding day. That's the best day you look, right? It just goes all downhill from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so I was just telling you like where I live. People always ask me like, where do you live? Because I don't live at the children's home. I live in the Northern Hemisphere. And so this is my little town that I live in. And there's approximately like 18,000 people. If I want to buy like meat or cheese, all the good foods, I have to go down to Nakuru, which is about an hour away. I can buy like my fruits and vegetables in Eldama Ravine, and that's what the market day looks like. I walk around and I barter, and I give people like 20 cents for a potato or whatever it is, or avocados. They have amazing avocados there. So that's just kind of my life up in Eldama Ravine. There's 4 white people that live there, or I should say there's 3 white people that live there, 3 missionaries. And then when I come to town, there's 4. So there's 4 of us there. And so everybody knows me in town. They all know my car. Whether I know them or not by name, they all tend to know me because I stick out like a sore thumb. So, but I like my little town. It's fun. And I live on an 18-acre farm, actually, where these missionaries live. This is my little tiny apartment. And this is my house. Now, it's a huge shop. They also do other things in this house. I just have where you can see the gate open. I have this little like 1-bedroom apartment in this big building. So I don't want you to overthink that I have lived the life of luxury because it's not. I do have hot water. I do have electricity for the most part. Yeah, I live a pretty good life. So one of our newest, and I literally just got an email from one of the missionaries this morning. We're building a sports complex. I know it sounds kind of a funny thing to build, but soccer is a really big thing for them. And so if we can have soccer tournaments at our our children's home, or our, I should say, our high school, that's kind of could attract more people. And so bringing in more income, of course, because we're always looking at income sustainability. And so again, this wasn't really on our radar, but we had a donor approach us with a significant amount of money. And so we decided to do this project. And so this is what we're embarking on right now. And literally the pictures just showed up this morning. You can kind of see the high school in the background. We have new kids arriving all the time. We just had these 4 new kids arrive. One of them we have already found a sponsor for. We're looking for 3 more sponsors. And it's really sad story on this one. And I know all the kids by name. They all call me Mom Jill. I know all their case histories, because you have to understand, when I lived there, like I was like, the only parental figure in their life for a while. And so now all those girls are, graduated from college, but so I got very attached to the kids, obviously, and they make it all worthwhile, right? It's always about the kids. And so the thing with their mom was giving birth to another child, and the mother died in childbirth, and then all the kids became orphans because the dad was no longer in the picture. And so, or the dad was an alcoholic or something. And so the baby, the newborn stayed with family, but then we took in 4 of the older kids. So kind of their story. They each have a different story, but it's amazing how resilient kids are, because they adjust very well, especially when they're well fed. So my goal is always to create, now that we have internet at the home, I'd like to connect a US classroom with a Kenyan classroom and do like cross teaching. Someday it'll happen. I'd like to start an AA program in the Kamonong community, and then maybe Eldama Ravine. And the reason behind that is because a lot of our kids come from broken homes, from alcoholism. It's a huge problem out there. And it's not like here, right? They drink like moonshine, the bush brew they call it, and it's just like obliterates their brain. I think it's more potent than normal grade alcohol here. And so we just see a lot of problems with that. So that's something I'd like to do in the community. And of course, that could ultimately help kids, not, prevent them from coming into the home, right? If they have stable home lives and their parents start getting sober. We are currently going to be fundraising for a fortified fence around the property. You have to realize, remember, if we live next door to mud huts, we become a very attractive, because we have computers, we have things, and people living in poverty, we become, people want to steal things from us or whatever. So we're trying to work on that. And then we're also trying to build a classroom for our school. The Kenyan government it's crazier than the US government. They're constantly changing their laws and their rules, especially when it comes to education. So we're looking to build another classroom. So that's really all I have. I know that's like, I just talked for 50 minutes. That's all I have. And then I have this slide about like this Kenyan statistics. But I just, it's very interesting. We have kids, we've lost, their parents have died from AIDS or motorcycle accidents. Tuberculosis is a big issue out there. Malaria, people die of malaria all the time. Our kids get malaria all the time. But we're able to afford treatment. So, but a disease is always a big thing. Healthcare is always a big thing out there. And so, my takeaway is from all of this, from what I do, and I share my passion, because I know I was called here to Kenya, but people are called to downtown San Diego to help the homeless, or whatever, the Boys and Girls Club, whatever. just volunteer and do something outside your comfort zone, something that brings you joy. So anyway, that's my story. I'm gonna open it up for questions. I'm laughing because I just talked for so long. Who has questions for you? Please, someone ask me a question. Please don't. Please
I
don't
don't
let
have
me talk to a screen.
I don't have a question, but that was amazing. Like, I know I've heard this before, but it's just like, it's so amazing to see what you're doing in Africa, and it's like very inspiring. So thank you.
You know, and it's not me. Like that's why I showed you some of our board members over here and there, and we've got great board members, amazing staff. And I can't take credit. To me, like, all the credit goes to God. God makes this all happen. Somehow I have just fallen into this and never would have thought, but it's just, one day I decided to take a trip to Kenya, and this is where it got me. And I kept thinking, when the first boy told me about that abuse, I was like, I almost called British Airways. I was like, get me on the next plane home, because I don't know if I can handle it, or was I up for the task?